1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. You're hot. Okay. It's good to see you. It's glad to have you back. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Hudson, and I have the distinct honor of introducing our special guest today. Good morning. I told him I would be very quick, but it's very dangerous to let me have a mic. But here's what I want to say in my introduction of Governor Christie. Is that we have a man here who has been elected twice in a state that is very democratic. And so what he knows is how to take on hard and tough challenges with real solutions and in a common sense way. And I'll tell you right now, he's done it in New Jersey, whether it was pension reform, whether it was lowering property taxes. And now he's talking about it. And I know he's going to be doing it in the future when he's president of the United States. So join me, ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming Governor Christie.
Thank you, Bill. Appreciate it very much. All right, good morning. Good morning. Thank you all for coming. Appreciate it. Thanks to Kirkwood for having me here very much. It's good to be back in Iowa. We've been in Iowa now since the debate on Tuesday night, and I'm happy you all are willing to take time to listen. And come and talk about what I think are some important issues. Before I start talking about the important issue I want to talk about this morning, I want to introduce you all to my wife of 29 years, who is here with me and traveling in Iowa with me, Mary Pat, Christie, the First Lady of New Jersey. So here's what we're going to do this week. Coming off the debate, one of the things that I was most disappointed about in the debate, which I thought overall was a really good night for us, was that there was not one question in an economic debate, in either debate, about entitlements. Now think about that. 71% of all federal spending today is on entitlements and debt service. So you have a debate on the economy among the 12 leading candidates for President of the United States on the Republican side, and there is not one mention of entitlements. I kept trying to fit it in my debate, but the questions were so far afield that, I know folks don't like it when they ask you one question, you give a completely other answer, So I try not to do that. Others feel differently, but I try not to do that. And it seems to me, if you think back to what Willie Sutton said a long time ago, they asked him, why do you rob banks? And he said, because that's where the money is. If you look at the federal budget, 71%, 71 cents of every dollar gets spent on entitlements and debt service. Yet we spend so much time talking about the other 29 cents. We're not going to fix the problems that we have now, and we're certainly not going to get America back where it needs to be if we don't talk about the 71 cents, if we don't talk about these issues. And so this week, I wanted to come here when I was in Iowa to Kirkwood to be on a college campus to talk about this because, believe me, while it's a problem for folks my age, it's an enormous problem for people who are here at Kirkwood right now, starting their lives, starting their careers. Because if we don't deal with this problem now, we're leaving this problem to you. And it will be a problem that will be much bigger and much more difficult to solve. And then later this week, we're going to be in Florida for an event with Governor Rick Scott, and then we're going to speak to a group of seniors in Florida on the same talk so that seniors understand that this affects them. But I also want seniors to understand that I was in Iowa on Thursday talking to their grandchildren about how this problem would affect them as well. This is a problem for all of America to solve, not just for any one group, and this doesn't pit one group against another. In fact, what this should do is unite these groups together, because we're all in this together, and we have to work on it together. It's the first speech I gave in the presidential race was on entitlement reform, and I'm the only candidate who has laid out a detailed entitlement reform plan. Still, I laid this out back in April. Now we're 2 weeks from Thanksgiving, and you find it unusual that the other 11 candidates aren't talking about it. And Hillary Clinton, on the other side, says it's not even a crisis. It's no problem. Even though Harvard and Dartmouth said that Social Security will be insolvent in 7 to 8 years. Not 78 years, 7 to 8 years. Social Security will be insolvent. Doesn't make any sense, everybody, for us to ignore this issue. We have to talk about it. And I did have some political advisors who told me, you're going to start a campaign for president talking about the thing that most people call the third rail of American politics. And I said, yes, that's exactly what I'm going to do, because it's time for us to trust the American people. The biggest problem with politicians these days, and there's plenty of them, but the biggest problem is they don't trust you. You know what the truth is, and I know what the truth is, but they don't want to talk about it because they're afraid they'll get you upset, get you angry. And if you get upset and angry, then you won't vote for us. I think quite the opposite. I think, especially now, you're tired of having us sing a happy tune, and then when we get into office, wind up not being able to deliver on all the things that we sang to you when we were looking to get your vote. And so now it's time to really have that honest conversation, and it is about trust, because I know you know this. All these things I'm going to tell you today, you may not know the specific point by point, but you feel it. You know that this is what is going on in our country, and what we need to do to make it better will be hard, because we didn't get here overnight. And so it always is hard. And you know this, whether you're fixing problems, at your home, whether you're fixing problems at your business, or whether you're a student and you just, didn't really do the reading in class for 3 or 4 weeks. And then all of a sudden the test is coming up and you're like, oh man, this is going to be the most miserable 3 days of my life getting ready for this test because I got to jam 4 weeks of work into 3 days. I did that, all right? So I speak from personal experience. This is not speculation. I did it. I know what that's about. Think about this. Today's 65-year-olds will receive an average net lifetime benefit of $327,400. And children born now will have a net lifetime loss of $420,600 to pay the bills that we're running up now. I mean, that's extraordinary generational theft. That's what it is. We all, our age and older, are stealing from our children and grandchildren because of inattentiveness, not because of malice. We don't want to do it. We just don't want to look at it. Well, we got to look at it. So let's look at it and see what we can do to help to fix this problem. Usually when I have these meetings, I say, I have a 12-point plan on entitlements, but I'm not going to give you the 12-point plan because I don't want you to glaze over. Unfortunately, you're going to glaze over today. I'm giving you all 12 points, okay? I think it's important on this issue to talk about it. I think it really is. Let me just tell you the overview of it. The plan will save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. $1 trillion. Those starting to be real numbers. But remember something. We have an $18 trillion debt right now. $18 trillion debt. So what this plan will do is put a little nick in that, but more importantly, won't add to it. It moves it in reverse, which is really important to do. And we go after all of the entitlement programs in terms of talking about them: Social Security, Medicaid, Medicare, and Social Security disability insurance. So let's talk about Social Security first, because that's the one that people get the most anxious about. So let's get it out of the way first. First on Social Security. One of the things that we need to recognize is a real blessing in life. We're all living longer. All right, so the average life expectancy now for a woman in America is 83 years old. And the average life expectancy for a man is 79 years old. And these these programs were developed, Social Security, in the 1930s, when life expectancy was the early 60s. So now we're living 20 years longer than when they developed these programs. And by the way, most of those 20 years, 15 of those 20 years for most people, are in retirement. So you have a situation where Social Security was a great deal for the government in the beginning. You know, you pay your whole life in, and maybe you'd collect 1 or 2 years, and then you'd pass away. And all the money would stay there that you would put in over the course of time. So it was not a bad deal for the government. In fact, it was a good deal. And you had many more workers paying into the system back then for every retiree. Now, it's about a 2-to-1 ratio. Back then, it was about 11 or 12 to 1, depending upon the year. So, you know, our society has been aging as well. But this is a good thing. We're living longer, and we're living better lives because of medical science, pharmacology. All those things help us live better and longer lives. We should celebrate that. But we also need to amend the program to recognize that. So I say we need to raise the retirement age 2 years, from 67 to 69. And we need to do that, phase it in over 25 years. So that means eligibility go up 1 month a year for 25 years. Now, guaranteed when I run against Hillary Clinton next fall, she'll say that I'm throwing grandma off the cliff, right? You know that's coming, right? Christie has a plan to end your Social Security. You know, you can hear the ads already, right? Well, that is the highest cliff you've ever seen in your life if it takes you 25 years to hit bottom, right? If I dump you off and 25 years later is when you finally hit ground, that's a long fall, everybody. So don't believe that stuff. It's just, you know, she'll do it because that's the Democrat playbook. That's what they do. But 25 years, adding 1 month a year means that for seniors who are on Social Security now, it doesn't affect them at all. For folks who are about to become eligible, it maybe affects them for a couple of months, depending upon their age. So instead of becoming eligible on their 67th birthday, they become eligible on their 67th birthday plus 3 months. I don't think that's going to make anybody fall off the cliff. But what it will do is for the young people who are paying into Social Security now, it's going to make the whole program more fiscally solvent over the long haul because people will be taking out less money over the course of time. And that'll be a good thing. It'll help to keep it more solvent. So raising the retirement age is just an acknowledgement of a blessing, of a longer life in this country because we're living more healthy, we're getting better medical attention, and, you know, we have drugs now that can help us deal with a lot of problems that you couldn't deal with before. Next part is how do we deal with the imbalance between what's coming in and what's being taken out? Now, for any of you who have balanced a checkbook at home or balanced a ledger sheet at your job, you know that you always confront this issue. And there's only 2 ways to fix it, right? It's either more revenue in or less money out. That's it. There's no other magic. It's more money in or less money out. I'm a less money out guy, and let me tell you why. Hillary Clinton will be a more money in person. She will suggest that we take the cap off the Social Security payroll tax and that you pay Social Security payroll tax on every nickel you earn. And she will say that's so we can tax the rich people and have them put more money into Social Security. And on its face, that could be a somewhat appealing argument to most of the people in America because it probably won't apply to a lot of them. But you got to look at how we got in this problem in the first place. The way we got in this problem in the first place is that the government lied to you and stole from you. And here's how. Every one of us who's paid FICA tax over time was told this, that this money is going into a trust account. It's going into, as Al Gore used to call it, a lockbox, all right? It's going into the lockbox, and it's going to be there, and then when you turn 67, we're going to start giving you your money back. Here's the ugly truth that you already know. There's no money in the lockbox. The only thing in the lockbox is a stack of IOUs from the federal government because they have already taken all the money that we've paid in payroll taxes and spent it on other things. Why'd they do that? Why'd they break their promise? Well, because it's easier than raising taxes on you, right? If the government has a choice, and believe me, I know this, if they got a choice between raising your taxes and getting angry, or there's this big pile of money over here that nobody's really looking at and don't really need right now, and I could fix this problem by just taking this money and promise them I'll give it back later, what do you think Washington, D.C. is going to do? take the money from the pile of money, not raise your taxes, take a victory lap, and act like a hero. Well, that's what they did. And so here's my question for the folks who say, let's just raise the payroll tax and put more money in. Why would you give more money to a group of people who already lied to you and stole from you on the promise that this time they're not going to lie to you and they're not going to steal from you? Listen, maybe it's because I'm from New Jersey and I'm a little more cynical than most, but I think that people in Iowa are fairly discerning also. This would be like if you deposited money in a local community bank. And that community bank, you knew the banker, you knew the bank president, and the bank went belly up, and you lost your money. And then a few years later, the same guy opened up a new bank on another corner in town. And he saw it, and he goes, hey, by the way, I opened up a new bank. It's really good this time. Why don't you come and bring your money to my bank? You look at him and go, hey, man, I remember you. You're the guy who had me lose my money the last time. I'm not putting my money in your bank. It's the same thing, everybody. We put our money in their bank. And you know what they did? They stole it. They stole it. Because I had a guy in Exeter, New Hampshire, at a town hall meeting who, when I told him about this, he goes, well, it's my money, I want it. And I'm like, listen, I'd love to give it to you, man. It's not there. It's not there. And it reminds me like my mom when we were growing up, and I'd go to the store with my mother, and I'd say, hey, Mom, can we buy this? Can I have this? And she'd say, oh, yeah, sure, Christopher, absolutely. I'm like, great, glad I came to the store today. I'm going to get something. My brother and sister are home. Dumb on them. They should have come to the store. You know, and I said, great. And she said, oh, no, wait. Don't take it off the shelf yet. We got to go home first. You got to go in the backyard and pick the money off the money tree. And then take that money off the money tree, and then you come back here and pay that. I said, we don't have a money tree in the backyard. She said, exactly. There is no money tree in the backyard. You know, folks in this race who say, like Governor Huckabee says this, Governor Huckabee and I, who are good friends, and I think if you saw the debate Tuesday night, you see that Governor Huckabee and I get along really well. We just fundamentally disagree on this one. You know, he says, well, it's awful, and the government did this, and you shouldn't have to pay for it. And I said to him after the debate, I go, Mike, who's going to? Is it going to be the money tree? Like, show me where it is, man. I'm all in. I'll go pick the money off the money tree and fix the problem. Who's going to pay for it, Mike? And I ask all of you the same question. Who's going to pay for it? I don't like bringing this news, but it is the truth. And we got to deal with it. So why would we give more money to them? That's why I'm a less money out guy. And here's my plan for less money out, which goes after the very same folks who Hillary Clinton is trying to do by taking more money early on. I say if you're making over $200,000 a year in retirement income, you've stopped working, that means outside your home, you've got $4 to $5 million saved. To get $200,000 in income, you've got at least $4 or $5 million saved. If you do, this is what I say to you. First, God bless you. Great job. You raised your family, you got to retirement, you have $4 or $5 million saved and invested. Great job. Second thing I say to you is we should all say, God bless America, because this is the only country where that happens. To folk, everyday, regular folks who work hard and play by the rules and have some success. So we should feel good about our country that gave us an opportunity to do this. But if you have that $4 to $5 million in the bank and you're getting $200,000 in income from that investment every year, do you really need your Social Security check? And you really need that $1,200 a month? Do you need that? You know, I'd say to you, if you're being honest with yourself, you don't. You don't need it. And if we give it to you, we're just making the program more and more insolvent. It's not going to change your lifestyle. Now, I know some people are going to say it's not fair. I understand that. It's not. But what's more fair? Is it more fair to have the senior who's worked hard, played by the rules, paid into Social Security, who doesn't have that money put away, and is counting on Social Security to be the difference between having to choose between rent and heat and food to do without? That's not what America's all about. It's never what we've been about. Social Security has always been about the idea of making sure that that's there so that no one grows old in poverty. That if you've worked hard and you've paid into the system, that you're not going to grow old in poverty. That in America, you're always going to be able to have a roof over your head and food on the table and a warm place to sleep. And Social Security helps to do that. If you're making the $200,000 a year in retirement income, you don't need that. You're already taken care of there. And so that's the big choice we're going to have to make on Social Security if we're going to make a choice. Is it more money in or less money out? And I believe if you're thinking in a common sense way, Less money out makes more sense. It's less risky. The more money you give the government, man, let me tell you, you know what's going to happen. You know what's going to happen. I don't need to come to Iowa and lecture you all about that. You know in your heart what's going to happen. Don't let it happen. Don't let them play class warfare on you. Don't let them tell you, no, this time we're going to tell you the truth. This time we're going to keep the money in the safe. And they're not. You know it and I know it. Something will come up that's a great idea, that's an urgent need. And don't worry, when you get old, we'll take care of you. I wouldn't take that risk if I were you. And as president, I won't take that risk with your retirement. And that's why we need to make sure we keep Social Security where it is. Next is Medicare, and it's the same concept, okay? With Medicare, I want to increase the eligibility age 2 years and phase it in over 25 years. Same thing, 1 month a year for 25 years. Again, for the same reason. We're living longer, we're living better, and so eligibility for Medicare should be a little bit later. I also want to do the very same thing with the very same numbers, except don't worry, I'm not telling you can't get Medicare. If you make over $200,000 a year in retirement income with that $4 to $5 million saved, then let's make sure we do this on Medicare. Right now, for that person, we subsidize their Medicare premium 75%. Let's only subsidize it 10%. So we'll still give you a subsidy. We'll make it a little more affordable, but you can afford to pay more. That's so that we can keep the subsidy in place for the people who can't afford it, who then otherwise would be going for their medical care to the emergency room. And you know what happens then? Not only does that person not get great care because it's not consistent care, they don't know the person when they walk in, they don't know what their family history is, they don't know any of that, but also it's more expensive and we're going to pay for it because the hospitals don't pay for all that care. They pay for some of it, and the rest of it they go to the state for that money. It's charity care. And so we're going to pay for it one way or the other. Let's pay for it within Medicare. Let's keep them within Medicare, where they can go to their doctor. They can see their doctor on a regular basis. They can get the best possible care they can. And that way, they can get the best possible outcomes for their life. And for you, if you're making over that $200,000 a year, you'll still get a 10% subsidy. You'll still be able to afford your Medicare. And the program will be much more solvent. Those steps alone save tens of billions of dollars over time for Medicare and make it much more affordable. And for low-income seniors, it's going to be available there and there for them in a way that they can afford it. Now let's talk about Medicaid. Medicaid has now become the most expensive medical program the government provides. And it's a split, it's a 50-50 split for the most part between the state and the federal government. Except what happens is the state's paying 50%, but in most instances we have no say in what happens. In New Jersey, we wanted to go to a managed care system for Medicaid. Now, managed care is nothing new, as you all know, and it's certainly not splitting the atom. It took them nearly 2 years for Washington to give us approval to have managed care organizations run our Medicaid program. 2 years. It's crazy. We shouldn't be having those decisions made in Washington, D.C. in some cubicle at the Department of Health and Human Services. It's where things go to die. Right? You send your paperwork there and it just goes to die there. And so here's what I say about Medicaid. Let's move to a per capita allocation. So what's that mean? It means that every state gets a certain amount of money per person, and that money will go up or down each year based upon two factors. Does your Medicaid population grow? And what does inflation do? So it's not like a straight block grant where people will say you get this certain amount of money and that's it. And whether your population goes up or the inflation goes up, you get the same amount of money. And then you have to provide less care if those things go up. Now, what I say is let's give the states the ability to manage. So for instance, here in Iowa, I'd give Branstad a chunk of money on Medicaid. And it would go up or down based upon population growth in Medicaid and inflation. And I'd say to him, Terry, you manage it. You have to provide medical coverage for the poor in Iowa, but you decide how to do it. You decide what's best for Iowa. Let me decide what's best for New Jersey. Let John Kasich decide what's best for Ohio. Let Scott Walker decide what's best for Wisconsin. I think that's the right way to go. Why should I have to be asking, I'm paying 50% of the cost, and I got to go say, Mother, may I, to some bureaucrat at Health and Human Services who doesn't know the first thing about New Jersey. They've never driven the New Jersey Turnpike. They've never been to a really good diner. And they've never met Tony Soprano, okay? None of it. They don't know a thing about New Jersey. The same way they don't know a thing about Iowa, yet they're making decisions on how to provide health care to the people of Iowa. Makes no sense. What this would save? Just think about this, over 10 years. This would save $600 billion. $600 billion over 10 years to allow the states to manage these things and to have the costs just fluctuate up or down based on population growth and inflation. And you can coordinate this care. The biggest cost, I can tell you as a governor, in Medicaid are the folks that they call dual eligibles. That's the elderly poor, because they get both Medicare and Medicaid. Think about these numbers. 40% of Medicaid spending and 27% of Medicare spending is on dual eligibles. And you know how much of a percentage dual eligibles are in terms of in both programs? 13%. So we're spending 40% of Medicaid on 13% of the people. Doesn't make any sense. It's 3 times the amount of people that are in it is the cost. Give that to me to manage, and that won't be the way it's going to happen. But you have all these rules from Washington, D.C. that don't give you any flexibility. We're doing things in New Jersey, like in the city of Camden, where we've got all the hospitals in to treat the Medicaid population and doctors that are associated with those hospitals. We've driven down Medicaid costs in the city of Camden in some of our poorest populations significantly, by more than 25%, because they're seeing doctors on a regular basis. They have a plan, a strategic plan. Those hospitals are in charge of managing the care of those people. And if they manage the care and reduce costs, they get a piece of the action. Not a bad idea. And it's working in Camden. And guess what? The people who love it the most are the people in Camden, who now get a doctor that sees them regularly, who lays out a plan for them on how they should live their lives, both in terms of the way they eat, the way they exercise. All of that is included as a holistic kind of plan. That's what we're doing in New Jersey. It took me 2 years to get that approved. Does it make any sense? Give me the money, let me make the decisions, and I'll be responsible. And if it turns out to be bad, guess what? They'll kick me out. That's the way it goes, right? That's the way it should be. Let's hold people accountable. The last piece of this is the worst part, right? It's the Social Security Disability Insurance Program. Now, when I gave that speech back last spring, I said Social Security Disability Insurance is going broke in 2016. And I said in the speech, watch, this president is going to steal from the retirement fund to be able to prop up the disability fund just long enough until he gets out of office, and then he's going to leave the problem for the next guy. And I remember getting excoriated in some, editorial pages about that, and I was being an alarmist and cynical, all these awful things. Well, did you see the budget deal that just happened, everybody? Between the president and the Republicans in Congress? Guess what they did in the budget deal? $150 billion is now been taken from Social Security retirement and sent to Social Security disability. $150 billion was taken from the retirement funds of current payers into the system and sent to a disability insurance program. It's exactly what I predicted in April. And how long will this bridge the Social Security disability problem? Oh, until June of 2017. Really great. Here's what we should be doing on Social Security disability. First off, think about this. This president has made it so easy for people to get on Social Security disability that there have been some months of his presidency where more people have signed up for Social Security disability insurance than have gotten a job. True statistic. And it's been a number of months because he lets everybody in. And there's no pathway to get out. There's no requirement to get out. Now listen, for those folks, some folks who are truly disabled, of course we want that program there for them. If they're truly disabled and can no longer work, the program is there for them. But here's what I think we should do. Let's start making Social Security disability something that you have to earn. Now, what do I mean by that? First is this. When you apply for Social Security disability, you should have to first go to a doctor and get a rehabilitation plan. And then work that rehabilitation plan with that doctor and see if we can actually get you back to work. The goal is not to get you on disability. The goal is to avoid disability. And let's work with your employer and say, listen, we'll give you tax incentives to be able to take that person back if they work their disability plan. It's all about honoring work rather than honoring staying home. And this is what they do in Europe. It's actually kind of soothing, so don't worry about it. Now, if it were like a fire alarm bell or some really loud song, yeah, it might break my concentration, but as I'm going through it, I'm like, boom, boom, I think it's kind of soothing for me. I'm feeling pretty good. So fear not, my friend. It's okay. That one's not bugging me. Let's get our disability population better. And if it turns out that they work a rehabilitation plan and they don't repair their disability, well, then we put them on disability insurance. But let's make them do this first. They're doing this, by the way, in Europe, and in the European countries, they've reduced their disability insurance rolls by 40%. If we did just half of that, it would save $40 billion in that plan. If we did just half of that. And we got to make sure that, what we could aspire to is what the Netherlands has done. I'm only going to use them as the example because they're the outlier, but they've reduced their rolls by 60%. That would save over $120 billion for the disability insurance program. So, the fact is that this is just common sense. But the president doesn't want to do this. Why? Because he judges the success of his programs on the social side by how many people are on them. So he brags about more people are on food stamps today than any time before in America. Is that a good thing? Like, I think it would be better if we judged our country by how few people were on food stamps. But he says, well, see, this shows what a loving government we have. Same thing on disability. More people on disability insurance now that Barack Obama has been president for nearly 7 years than at any time in American history. Do we really think we just have more disabled people now? Is there some reason that, while all the other things are going well in America, right? While life expectancy is getting longer, while health is getting generally better, because of all these other things, the one outlier is disability. No, we're more disabled than we've ever been before. It doesn't make any sense. This is the difference between the kind of presidency I want and the kind of presidency that Barack Obama has and Hillary Clinton will have. I want a president who honors work, who says that there's not only a monetary value to work, there's an intrinsic value in the soul for work. That when you get up every day and you have a place to go and something to do, and people who value what you do, that makes you feel better about yourself. You come home every night, you've got something to talk about. You've done something concrete. Every job has value. It has value not just to put food on the table. It has value to make you feel good about who you are, and every job can lead to something else. Yet our disability plan in our country is encouraging the exact opposite. It's encouraging people to stay home and stay on the couch. And if any of you have been sick any time recently, and you had to stay home and stay on the couch or in bed and you watch TV, you don't want to do that during the day. I mean, I haven't done it recently because I've been a little busy. But, the fact is I have done it in the past. Your mind will turn to jello watching some of that stuff that they got on in the middle of the day. I never knew there were that many really, truly unhappy people who wanted to talk about how unhappy they were on television. Right? I didn't know there were that many people who had a problem with their boyfriend or girlfriend and actually wanted Maury to figure it out, And they start throwing stuff at each other and punching each other, and all these bodyguards come out separating people. And I remember being sick. This is back when I was U.S. Attorney. I've luckily been sick enough to stay home since I've been governor. But when I was U.S. Attorney, I got really sick one time, right around Christmas time. Mary Powell, remember, I couldn't even go to Christmas dinner. We were going to my mother-in-law's house. I swear I was sick. That's not why I didn't go. Swear I was really sick. But I was so sick I couldn't get out of bed. And it went on for like 4 or 5 days, and everybody else went to work. You know, Mary Pat went to work, the kids went to school or out with their friends, and I was sitting home, and I was just watching TV, and I was kind of in that, you know, flu-induced fog that you get, right? You're taking all that cold medicine, and you're kind of in and out of things, but you keep the TV on because, well, why not? And I would just kind of, every once in a while, wake up, and it seemed like every time I woke up, there was a different talk show host separating a different boyfriend or girlfriend who were fighting with each other about whether, you know, you really love me or you don't love me. I was like, man, I didn't know there was that many people in America who were having this fight and wanted to have it on television. There's not an intrinsic value to that, I don't think. I don't think that soothes the soul or uplifts our spirits. At least it didn't for me. And we don't want to have people encouraging people to do that, to be staying at home. We want people going to work. All of those things that I talked about, those are the 4 major entitlement programs. All 4 of those, when you put all those combined, and we've had it scored by the Congressional Budget Office, so this isn't me, you know, with a calculator in the back of the room, like figuring out how much will this save. You know, we got all these things submitted to the Congressional Budget Office, and they all got scored by an independent group, and it saves over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And none of them hurts anybody. Doesn't hurt anybody. Makes things a little bit tougher. You got to put a little more out of your own pocket if you've been very successful in this country. You got to get a disability plan if you've been hurt, and you got to go work it and try to get yourself better. But none of it hurts anybody. And none of it takes a benefit away from someone. You're still going to get your Social Security unless you don't need it. Everyone's going to still get their Medicare when they get old enough. The poor are still going to get treated in Medicaid. And those who are truly disabled will get their disability insurance. And in the meantime, we won't bankrupt our nation. We won't throw it on the backs of our kids. And we'll have some money to rebuild our military and to invest in science and technology with the private sector going forward so that America can remain the cutting-edge place for technology in our world. Otherwise, let me tell you, everybody, we're not going to have any money to do any of this. In 20 years, if we continue on this pace, in 20 years, every dollar we spend today will be spent on entitlements or debt service. That means no money for the Pentagon, no money for education, no money for science and technology, no money for the National Institutes of Health, no money for any of that. No money for highways or bridges or roads, none of it. What it will mean will be massive tax increases. European-style tax rates. 70, 80% of every dollar you earn going to the government. It's not the kind of world I want to live in. It's not the kind of world I want to bequeath to my children. And so, you know, it's important for everybody to understand that this is everybody's problem. It's everybody's problem. It's not just the problem for the elderly. It's not just a problem for the folks who are approaching their retirement years. It's a problem for the young men and women in college right now or just starting a job. I'll end with this and then take a couple of questions from you if you want about any of it. But I was doing a town hall in New Hampshire, and a 23-year-old guy came up to me after I talked about entitlement reform at a town hall meeting, and he said, "Governor, thanks for talking about entitlement reform." And I said, "You're welcome." And he said, "Because, you know, I just got my first job." And he said, "When I get my pay stub," he said, "you know, I see that FICA tax being taken out of my paycheck every 2 weeks, and I got to tell you the truth, I feel like a chump." He said, "Because I'm paying that money every 2 weeks, and I know I'm never going to get anything." We can't have our youngest generation feeling like chumps. We can't have them feeling like what they're doing is paying in just to take care of us, and then when their time comes, that there'll be nothing left for them. That's not right, and it's not who we are. And so we got to talk about this issue, and it's a really important one. It's not the kind of thing, you know, that usually makes poll numbers light up. But I got to tell you the truth. I think that in today's times and the challenges we face in America, leaders should be more focused on changing polls than following polls. And that's what I'm trying to do, is slowly but surely get everybody around to the point that this is something we need to do. And, you know, when Americans have been confronted with big challenges over the course of our 200 and nearly 40 years now of existence, we've always stepped up to the big challenges. And we'll step up to this one too. But we got to get there. We got to get everybody thinking the same way and pulling the oars in the same direction. We'll always have a few stragglers, that's fine. That's what makes our country great. But the rest of us will get the job done. So I would love to take any questions from you, all about anything that I just talked about or anything else that's on your mind. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I'm very active in the Alzheimer's Association, and we get figures as to what we're going to be spending out of Medicare in order to take care of Alzheimer's patients. In the state of Iowa, we have 5,000. In the United States, we have 5 million that currently have Alzheimer's, and this is going to keep getting larger. So what's your solution to these kinds of diseases that will eliminate future expenses instead of trying to pay for them?
Really important. That's part of why I said that what this will do is not only save these programs, but give us money to invest in science and technology. There are 4 big diseases in our country that we have to get a handle on that amount for about 80% of medical care costs as people get older, right? There's heart disease, there's diabetes, there's cancer, and Alzheimer's. Those 4 amount for about 80% of the medical spending that we do for people as they enter their older years. We've made great strides on heart disease, as you know. The medicine, things like Lipitor and Crestor, and the treatments that we have in heart disease, we've made extraordinary steps in that. We're making extraordinary steps in cancer. And while cancer still kills, a lot of people in this country every year, it kills many fewer than it used to. But we are not making great progress on Alzheimer's or diabetes in terms of tangible results. We're seeing some good things in research that are giving us some hopeful signs, but we've got to get better on both of those. And so my point would be, take some of this money that we're saving, these entitlement programs, give them to the National Institutes of Health and the National Science Foundation. Let them partner with the pharmaceutical industry in this country, and let's get some treatments and cures. Because we're never going to be, as the population continues to age and baby boomers continue to get older, 5 million Alzheimer's patients is going to look like a picnic compared to what we're going to be facing. And the costs for that, because most Alzheimer's patients right now wind up having to be institutionalized, the cost of that is extraordinary. It's breathtaking. And so what we need to do is to partner with our pharmaceutical industries to be able to find new treatments and cures for this, for all those 4 diseases, but particularly where we're lagging behind, which is in diabetes, which quite frankly, for most of us is lifestyle choices. And we got to get better at that. And hopefully we get some pharmacological help as well. But Alzheimer's is the one. If we can find an effective treatment for Alzheimer's that forestalls the onset of the disease or eventually cures it, the billions of dollars we'll save will be absolutely breathtaking. And the problem is, in this year's budget, and this will show you how backwards the president's policy is, National Institutes of Health spending went up 0.1%. The National Science Foundation spending went down 4.3%, and Medicaid spending went up 29%. It's again this philosophy that the more we spend on helping people, the better off our country is. Well, it's just not true. Because if we took half of that increase in Medicaid and put it towards the National Institutes of Health, what they could do in laboratories across this country with the great minds we have working on these problems would be amazing. But we're not doing it because it's easier, from the president's perspective, to say no to that than it is to reform these programs in the way I'm talking about. So it's extraordinary. Down 0.1%, or up 0.1% in National Institutes of Health, down 4.3% in the National Science Foundation. The folks who helped to develop these cures and treatments with the private sector, yet we're spending 29% more on Medicaid, which is just treading water, not making any progress. So you raise a really good point, and I think it's the thing that will make the difference between whether we survive a fiscal crisis or we don't. Because we keep piling onto those numbers and we don't do anything to help the underlying causes, we're going to be sunk, absolutely sunk. We'll be Greece soon, and we don't want to be. We do not want to be. Yes, ma'am.
My family lives in Virginia, and in a part of Virginia, Appalachia and Southern Virginia, where disability and Social Security disability is really unemployment.
Yeah.
As the job situation is dire. Do you have a plan or a way to deal with that as part of the Social Security disability?
Sure. I mean, listen, it's twofold, right? I think first off, we got to stop that mindset, right? Secondly, we've got to try to bring greater economic growth to the entire country. I mean, let's face it, last quarter, economic growth in this country was 1.5%. I mean, that's pathetic. It's the worst recovery from an economic recession since World War II. And why? Because we have higher taxes, we have greater regulation, we have government involved in every corner of our lives. And folks in Appalachia who see this say, well, you know, I can't get a job anyway, so I'll just sign up for disability, and when my unemployment runs out, and by the time the government catches up to the fact that I'm not really disabled, I'll deal with that then. So I think we have to put pressure on both sides. First is to set rules on disability that doesn't make that look like a viable option to them. Second piece is you have to have greater economic growth. And so that's why when I say let's eliminate all of the loopholes and the deductions in the tax code, except for home mortgage interest deduction and charitable contribution deduction. What that'll allow us to do is to lower our rates to where they were when Reagan was president. 28% on the top end, 8% on the low end, even lower than where Reagan was, and one bracket in the middle. And then people won't feel as if the tax system is rigged anymore for the rich, because it won't be. Right now it is. I mean, the dirty secret is it's rigged for the rich. And we all know that, so let's say it. It's rigged for the rich, but if we have 3 tax brackets, 28 in the middle and then 8, and there's no more fancy deductions for things and weird investments that allow you to, you know, forestall taxes. But you got 2 choices. How much did I spend on my mortgage interest at home? And what charities did I contribute to and how much? And you can deduct those. You can do your taxes in 15 minutes. And we could fire a lot of IRS agents, which would be a lot of fun. And that would just be fun for me. I hope you would enjoy it too. And there'd be more money in your pocket to spend the way you want, which will create more economic activity and more jobs. But we've got to kill that mindset too, that, well, we can get away with this, because we shouldn't allow people to get away with it. We just can't, because we can't afford it. And by the way, it's not good for them either. So we've got to figure out a way to get them back to work, and the only way to do that is to take growth from 1.5% to 4%. We do that, then we're in really good shape. So they're telling me I could take one more question, which means I'll take 2. Because I want them to know I'm the boss. See, here's the thing. I want you all to understand what it's like to run for president. I don't think any of you in this room has run for president other than me. And so let me tell you what it's like. You think it's really glamorous and all the rest of it? Here's what it is. It is about having a group of people, all much younger than you, tell you where to go and what to do every day. That's it. That's what it is. Yes, sir.
Governor Christie, thank you for being here at Kirkwood. My question is actually a thank you. I'm actually involved in the College Democrats, but I'm here to I wanted to come here, I heard that you were going to be here last night, for talking about drug addiction and treatment. I watched your 6-minute video on Joe Scarborough. That hit me. That hit me really deep. Both my parents are recovering addicts. That hit me quite deeply, and I wanted to thank you for talking about that issue. I think it's something that nobody talks about and we need to talk about. And just hearing it from you, you know, I don't know if I'm going to become a Republican, but yeah, don't kill me. But it's very, very nice to hear, and it makes things seem more hopeful on both sides. So yeah, I wanted to thank you.
Well, thank you for that. Listen, you don't need to become a Republican. Just next November once. That's it. Go in the voting booth. Just find where my spot is. Close your eyes. I promise you it won't hurt. It really won't. And you won't have to tell anybody. It'll be our secret. Listen, I appreciate that. And here's the thing. Part of why I've been talking about this for 19 years is because we all say in this country, both parties, we say that the key to American success begins with the American family, right? We say that, you know, if families are strong, then our country will be strong, and our economy will be good, and we'll have a culture that we can all really feel good about and proud of. Well, there's nothing in this country right now that's tearing families apart more than this problem. Nothing. I can't blame it on that guy. He left. There's nothing. I don't know, Jim. Don't shrug your shoulders at me. I'm not in charge of the soundboard. I mean, come on. Do I have to be in charge of everything? I mean, please. Someone's just got to be in charge of the soundboard. Here's the thing. I tell the story that I told in that video, and I've spoken about that often. And by the way, that just came out a week ago Friday. Huffington Post put it out. I'd said it back in the beginning of October, and I've told that story over and over a number of times about both my mom and my good friend from law school. It's now 8 million people have seen that video. 8 million people. I didn't know there was going to be a video, let alone that 8 million people would see it. But let me tell you about all the different people that it affects. We've got this guy right here talking about his mom and dad as recovering addicts. Last Friday, I was in Hanover, New Hampshire to do a town hall meeting. I was walking up to the venue where I was having the meeting. There was a couple standing there with their dog. I went up to say hello to them, and he said, "Governor, we just wanted to come here today and thank you for talking about this in the video. It really meant a lot to us." And he introduced me to his wife, and I said, "Well, thank you for saying that." And they said, "Our son died a week ago today." And he was 23 years old, and he died of a heroin overdose. And our daughter goes to college here at Dartmouth. And so we came up this weekend because we've been a tough week for us, and we wanted to make sure she was okay. But we heard you were going to be here, so we walked over and just wanted to say thank you. The next morning, I did a town hall meeting in Plymouth, New Hampshire. And after the town hall meeting was over, people kind of linger around a little bit, and I'm taking pictures and talking to folks. And there was this one couple kind of standing off by themselves, and they weren't coming over, which is kind of odd. And I got done, and then they finally walked over when there was no one else around. And they said, "Governor, we came here this morning because our son has been battling addiction for 5 years to heroin. He's been in and out of rehabs, and it's breaking our heart. And we saw your video, and as soon as we got done watching it, we went on the internet to see where you were going to be out in public next, and we saw it was going to be here." They live in Connecticut. They left their house at 4:30 in the morning on Saturday morning for the 3.5-hour drive to Plymouth, New Hampshire, so they could see me at this town hall meeting and say thank you to me for talking about this. Because they said, "When you say it, we feel like there might be a chance we won't be alone on this." People are dying every day because we're not paying attention. Because we don't understand that this is a disease, everybody. We all want to make moral judgments about it. I understand that. I really do. But that's why I talk about my mom in the video. And for those of you who haven't seen it, I won't go through the whole video. You go take a look at it. But, my mom was a smoker, right? And she started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948, when no one knew that smoking was really bad for you. But, of course, she found out in 1964, like everybody else did, and the Surgeon General's report came out. And I can remember as a kid, my mom trying everything to quit smoking, right? She tried the patches and the gum. She tried hypnosis. It didn't work for smoking, but it was actually good for us. It mellowed her out a little bit, Mom was getting hypnosis. It was really nice, She got, some of the edges got sanded down a little bit. It was good. But it didn't help her with the smoking. And when she was 71 years old, she got diagnosed with lung cancer. Kind of the inevitable result of 55 years of smoking. But when she did, no one came to us and said, "Well, we're not going to treat her. She's getting what she deserves." No doctors, no government came to us and said, "Listen, she knew it was bad for her, and she did it anyway, and so she's going to die, and that's the way it goes. And we're not going to help her." Everybody reached out who loved my mother and said, "We want to help. We want to help lift her spirits. Doctors were going wild with different kinds of treatments to try to extend her life." And everybody thought, well, this is something that we need to do. And I wonder if my mom had been addicted to heroin, whether people would have had the same reaction. And I suspect they wouldn't have. Because they would say, well, it's illegal, and she made a choice. And, it's a disease. It's a disease that we need to treat. And if we don't treat it, it tears families apart. Because it doesn't only kill the person who takes the drugs. It affects every person in their life. Because every person watches that death happening. And it tears you apart. And it destroys families. And so, listen, Just Say No was a really good idea. It was well-intentioned. And throwing all these people in jail was well-intentioned. It didn't work. And we got to get real with the fact that it doesn't work. Now, listen, you commit violent acts, you're dealing this poison in neighborhoods, you go to jail. There will always be a jail cell in the Christie administration for those people. But the small-time users who are addicted, We cannot continue to put them in jail. It's not fixing the problem. And we often think about the mother and father who lose a child. And as parents ourselves of 4 children, it's an unthinkable thing to bury your own child. And anybody I've ever met who's gone through it says it is the most unnatural, horrific thing they've ever gone through. But let's remember something, it's not just that way too. This young man's talking about his parents were addicts and recovering. You know, what happens to the siblings, to the brothers and sisters who have to go through this, and what effect does it have on their lives? You know, so I'm going to be the kind of president who's going to talk about this because I want to remove the stigma. I was not ashamed to tell anyone that my mother had cancer. I was not ashamed to reach out for help and advice from anyone who I thought might be able to help save my mother's life. No one else should be ashamed and see it was a personal failing of theirs to ask for help for a member of their family who's drug addicted. And let's face it, everybody, I'm sure there is no one in this room who has not made a decision in their life that they wouldn't want to take back. I know I have. I'm just lucky that that decision didn't involve drugs, because I could very well be an addict. And that's why on that video I end by saying, there but for the grace of God go I. Because it can happen to any of us. It's not about how much money you make. It's not about how much education you have. It's not about where you live. It happens to everyone. And so you coming here today is another example of the fact that this is one of those things that can really, we look for issues that can unify our country. We look for issues where we don't have fundamental disagreements, right? There's some fundamental disagreements between Republicans and Democrats that we just have to have out and let the majority of the people in the country decide. But this is not one of those issues. This is one where we can actually bring Republicans and Democrats together to work together to solve problems. We're really looking for those, aren't we? And if we do that and we solve those problems together, man, how much better off will our country be? And maybe it leads to the next thing that we can work on together. But it's one of those things that I tell you I've gotten as, when you get a positive write-up from the National Review on the same issue that you get 20 minutes of positive coverage from Rachel Maddow, this is either a uniting issue or we are facing the apocalypse. One or the other. I'm hoping it's the former, but it's one or the other, right? So that's the kind of thing that we need to be talking about. I'm glad you brought it up. I thank you for coming. And I take one more question before I have to run out of here. Yes, sir.
You have a logical explanation for why a candidate like Donald Trump is apparently appealing to and getting so much support from currently from so many voters?
Because people are angered and disgusted with government in Washington, D.C. That's why. There's no other way to explain it. Now, listen, I have to give a disclaimer. Mary Pat and I have been friends with Donald Trump for 13 years. And I've known him for that long. We've socialized with him. Donald's a generous guy and a nice guy. And, you know, what you see on TV, by the way, is exactly what you get. The people ask Mary Pat and I all the time, and they find out we've been friends with him for that long, like, so what's he really like? I'm like, that's it, man. That is it. You go out to dinner with him, that's it. You sit down, he starts talking, he keeps talking while he's eating, he keeps talking when the check comes, and he talks to you all the way to the car, and about himself. That's it, right? Right. The last time Mary Pat and I went out to dinner with Donald and Melania last fall, right after the election in 2014. We went out to dinner in New York together, and after we got done, Mary Pat and I got in the car, and she looked at me and she said, "I'm exhausted." She said, "I'm exhausted. I can't, he's exhausting. It's exhausting to listen to him," right? But I think what Donald has tapped into for a period of time is just the complete anger and disgust with both parties in Washington. That, you know, we had Barack Obama get elected in 2008, Mr. Hope and Change, and the country gave him a whole Democratic Congress and a filibuster-proof Democratic Senate, right? And didn't get anything done. So then in 2010, we give a Republican House. And they say, boy, you put us in there, we're going to really hold his feet to the fire, and you're going to see change. They get in, nothing happens. So we reelect Obama in 2012, and he does more stuff that we don't like. So 2014, the Republicans say to us, hey, the problem's not, listen, we got the House, the problem's Harry Reid. See, if we can get rid of Harry Reid, oof, you're going to see some real progress in Washington, right? So we all band together in states. I went around and campaigned for a bunch of these folks. I campaigned for Joni Ernst here in Iowa, right? I'm glad Joni's the senator. But we elect a majority Republicans, and nothing's happened. And now they say to us, well, the problem is we don't have a filibuster-proof majority. If you got a 60, like, come on, enough, all right? And people are like, don't play us, don't play us. And so when Donald comes in the way Donald speaks, and he says, everyone in Washington's a loser. I'm a winner, I'll win in Washington, everyone else is a loser, right? People go, yeah. He's got something there. Everybody in Washington's a loser. He's rich. Maybe that makes him a winner. Okay. I don't think people have thought about it in great depth yet. Okay? We're counting, those of us who are also in this race, are counting on the people in Iowa and New Hampshire, now that, Thanksgiving is coming and Christmas is coming, for you all to start thinking. And start thinking about the fact that that sentiment is a good sentiment. But then anybody can burn a building down. Not everybody can rebuild it. And you have to have the experience to know how to do that. Anybody, you can hire any dummy to do a demolition job. Anybody can swing a hammer and demolish something. You hire very different people to swing the hammer to build it. And so what I would suggest to you is you want someone who is not part of Washington, D.C., but who actually knows how to build something, knows how to do something. That's what you're going to want. I don't blame anybody for not wanting to elect anybody from Washington, because it seems like they go down there, they start drinking the water there, and they forget. We had a United States Senator in my state pass away about 2 years ago now or so, Frank Lautenberg, and I was governor at the time, so I get to appoint the replacement. And one of the first things the press asked me was, are you going to appoint yourself? Because you could do that. You can appoint yourself to the United States Senate. I said, I would rather commit suicide than be in the United States Senate. Got a lot of publicity around the country saying that I would rather be dead than be in the United States Senate. But I got to tell you the truth. Given what goes on down there, there's only one job in Washington I want, and it's a job that can make things happen. So I think what you're seeing with Donald Trump, and to an extent Dr. Carson as well, is people who have had absolutely no experience in this, who people say, well, they're clearly not part of the problem in Washington, and that's why they're taking the approach they are. But you also need to know, after like day one when you demolish everything, then what's next? What's next? And if you don't have experience in how to do this, if you haven't done it before, you're not going to want to see what's next. You think it looks bad now? Wait. Could get worse. So we got to be careful about that. And that's the way I explain it. And I say that with great admiration for Donald as a businessman. He's obviously been a very successful businessman, an incredibly successful TV star, and he does not lack for confidence, I can guarantee you that. But all of that, and I've told him this to his face, so I'm not saying anything now that I haven't said to Donald. I said, Donald, you don't want this job. This does not play to your skill set. I said, if the Speaker of the House doesn't post one of your bills, you can't fire him. It's just not the way it works, man. I want this. No, you're fired. It's not gonna. And he goes back to his office on Capitol Hill and says, oh, yeah? Wait till you see I'm going to mess with you now. You need a different skill set. And having worked for the last 6 years with a completely Democratic legislature, every day of my governorship, I understand that you have to work with people. Now, I stand up and fight. I've vetoed more tax increases than any governor in American history. Americans for Tax Reform put that out 6 weeks ago. I didn't even know that, but I have. I have to thank my liberal Democratic legislature for that distinction, though, because if they hadn't sent them, I couldn't have vetoed them. So I know how to stand up when I want to, but we've also made lots of deals, as Mark said in the beginning, on pension reform, on capping property taxes, on teacher tenure reform, on balancing 6 budgets in a row without raising taxes, in reducing spending by $2 billion. And those are all things I did with a Democratic legislature. That's the kind of person that I think you need, who will work with the other side. You have to. And the worst thing I heard about this president was, of recently, in terms of that issue, was that it was about two or 3 months ago, John Boehner had been on Air Force One for the first time. Guy's been the Republican leader in the House for the president's entire presidency. And nearly 7 years into it is the first time he was ever on Air Force One. Listen, I don't agree with Nancy Pelosi on much, but if I'm president of the United States and she's the Democratic leader, she wants to come on Air Force One, she can come wherever she wants. She wants to take the M&Ms, take the M&Ms. I don't care. Because every time she comes on that plane with me and she sits with me, she's going to realize I'm a good person. She may not agree with me, but she's going to realize I'm a good person. I'm going to realize she's a good person. That's the start of how you rebuild it. Trust between each side, not in our positions, but in our character. And if you trust somebody on the other side, then you can make a deal with them. If you don't trust them, you'll never make a deal with them because you always think you're going to get shafted. Well, no, it doesn't have to be that way. So that's the way I explained Donald. That's the way I explained his shortcomings as a potential president and why I think I'm the better choice. So we're going to keep working. And I'll end with something that somebody in New Hampshire said to me a few months ago. I got done with a town hall kind of meeting like this, and he came up to me afterwards. He goes, I agree with everything you said today. You were really good. I'm really a fan. I really like it. And I said, oh, great, thanks. He goes, but I'm not voting for you. I said, okay, why not? He goes, because you forgot to do something. I said, I forgot to do something. What did I forget to do? And he said to me, you forgot to do something, and because you didn't do this, I can't vote for you. And I said, all right, but can you at least tell me what I forgot to do? And he said, you didn't ask for the vote. Went through this whole thing. I was really impressed. I got to the end. I'm waiting for you to ask for my vote. You didn't ask for the vote. I think you want the vote, but you didn't ask for it. And he looked at me, he said, son, in New Hampshire, that's what we do. So he started to walk away. And I said, can I have your vote? He goes, too late. He said, I'll come back another time. We'll see if you've learned anything. So ever since that time, I asked for the vote, okay? And so I not only want your vote here in Iowa when you caucus on February 1st, but I want your support and your confidence too. Because the vote gets me to become president. The support and the confidence give me an opportunity to be a good president. I don't want you to put me there, and I don't want to fail. I'm there to succeed. And so I can succeed with your support and your confidence in addition to your vote. And that's what I'm hoping to earn over the course of the next, I don't know what it is, 90 days or so, a little less than 90 days till we caucus in Iowa, and in New Hampshire as well. And, that's what this is all about. So I'm never going to forget to do that again. So I'm asking. Even you, brother, I'm asking you too. We're going to have to work on it a little harder. But, so I thank you for coming today, for taking the time to listen. I appreciate it very much. It's a really important issue, and one that if we get right, then the future of America is limitless. If we get it wrong, we're heading to be Greece. Those are pretty stark choices. And I think we know which choice to make. We just have to have a leader who wants to lead us there and people who are willing to support the leader who wants to lead us there. So thanks for coming today. I appreciate it very much.